Hey, I'm Brian and this is my XPS 15. Of course, I already reviewed this device, you can check out that video up here. So in this video I want to go into how it's held up, what things I noticed over the past few months since making that video, and also whether it's still as good of a buy as it was back then. So let's go! Of course, this is an update on my original review, so it won't have all of the details and specs that you will find in that video. If you want to know all of those things, then you should watch that video that is linked up in the cards, as I said before. I also think this update is very relevant because I've actually been using this computer as my primary computer for university and video editing, so making the videos that you see here, for the past 9 months since it came out in summer. So I've actually been a full-time user of this computer for hours every day, and not just like some other YouTubers who go back to their MacBooks after the review and then just cover it again a couple months later but didn't really use it every day. I'm definitely still a big fan of the design of this laptop, and it doesn't have to hide amongst Apple's MacBooks. What I did notice though is that over time the carbon fiber definitely collects a lot of dust, and you will definitely have to wipe it off every couple of days. That's not that nice, and it also collects a lot of grease from your fingers. So you will definitely have to take good care of this so the laptop still looks pristine a couple of months later. What fortunately wasn't as big of an issue as I thought in my initial review of this device is the speaker holes getting blocked by dust. That's definitely nice to see, and it still looks very good despite all of the dust on the wrist rest. The keyboard and trackpad are still the best that I've ever had on any Windows laptop, and I still enjoy using them every day. The big trackpad is still basically in a class of its own. There are not many Windows laptops, even still almost 1 year later, that have this great of a trackpad. And the keyboard is also really great to type on. What you do notice over time though is that the backlight isn't really executed that well. It turns off very quickly, so if you're typing at night, then you always have to press some random keys in order to turn on the backlight again so you can see what you're doing. And many people also asked in the comments under the review if the trackpad really doesn't wobble. And yes, actually the trackpad on my XPS 15 still doesn't have any issues with wobbling. It's still super solid even all of these months later. What isn't as great as the keyboard and trackpad though is the webcam. If you do a lot of video calls, like I do now, especially for university, then you will notice that the quality definitely isn't that great. It's not that sharp, and the auto brightness also takes a long while to adjust the lighting conditions. And when I see the webcam quality of other people that use Microsoft Surface devices, for example, I'm always a bit jealous. What you also have to bear in mind is that the Bluetooth antenna of the XPS really isn't that strong. When you connect a lot of Bluetooth devices at once, then you will experience some lag with some of them. When I use Bluetooth headphones and my Bluetooth keyboard and my Bluetooth mouse, for example, I sometimes have the mouse pointer stuttering. This only occurs once in a while though, and only with many Bluetooth devices connected at once, so it doesn't really deteriorate the whole experience. Battery life on my XPS 15 has held up surprisingly well. Of course, now I have a lot more programs running in the background and a lot more stuff installed, so it isn't quite as good as it was initially, but I can still definitely get a 2-digit number of hours out of it if I only do browsing or writing documents. Of course though, when you do a lot more heavy work like video editing or animating stuff in After Effects, as I said in my original video, that goes down to 3 hours very quickly. It's definitely nice to see though that after months and months of heavy use and using it for hours on battery every day and charging it basically every night, it still holds up very well. An issue I did have a couple of months ago though was that the laptop suddenly started to get very hot, even with very basic tasks, and the fans started kicking on a lot more often than I was used to. The only thing that ended up fixing this was a reset of the whole device. Now it's back to being totally silent when just doing office work or browsing the web, but I think that this definitely shouldn't happen so early into the life cycle of this laptop, and it's probably due to some optimization issues with the software. What I still really like about this laptop is the I/O assortment. Of course, it still only has USB Type-C, but with some adapters, and you actually get one adapter free in the box, so that's really great, you can just basically get around that really easily. And it's a very new standard, you have Thunderbolt, so that's very nice. What I like the most though, especially as a video creator, is that it still has a full-size SD card slot. I've basically used that every day since I got this laptop, and it's a lifesaver. On MacBooks you would always have to take an adapter, and when you forget it, then basically you can't transfer the footage from your camera. But with this, you don't have any adapter that you can forget, you can just always plug in the SD card into the laptop right away, and that's really nice. What also came in really handy is the upgradability of this laptop. I already mentioned in my original video that I upgraded the RAM to 32 GB, and I did say back then that 512 GB of SSD was enough for me. And while that is true, now that I'm abroad for a couple of months, I don't have access to my server, so I did upgrade the SSD in here to 1.5 TB with an additional NVMe drive. Fortunately, that's really easy, just removing a couple of screws from the bottom and popping in a new NVMe drive, and you're done, storage extended. On a MacBook, for example, you would just have to use an external SSD because there's no option to upgrade the storage after the fact. That's much more expensive, and of course you always have that thing dangling off the side of your laptop. So when you want to save money initially and want to upgrade the storage down the line, the XPS 15 is definitely still a great option. Just bear in mind that it doesn't actually come with a second screw for the second M.2 drive, so you will also need to get a bag of M.2 screws in order to make that work. Performance also held up really well over time. I actually didn't end up upgrading the 32GB that I have in here to 64. So even in Premiere and After Effects, with all of the updates that came out since I originally made the review of this laptop, it still performs really well in those programs. Export times are still really fast, only a couple of minutes using the 1650 Ti in here, and the CPU also held up really well in terms of its performance. I'm also still a big fan of the display on this laptop. That it's matte still came in handy many times when the sun was shining on it, and the colors are still amazing too. Of course, it's not touch and it's also only 1080p, but both of those things actually didn't bother me at all, even so many months later. I still think that on this 15.6-inch screen, 1080p is plenty and you don't have to spend the additional money to get the 4K panel. So all of that sounded quite positive, so would I buy this laptop again? I think that answer is a bit more complicated. Of course, it's still a really nice laptop with good performance, an amazing design, a great keyboard, a great trackpad, basically the best all-around Windows experience you can buy. So if you can take advantage of Windows in what you do, so if you for example use Adobe Creative Cloud or other programs that take advantage of Windows over macOS, and especially the NVIDIA GPU and CUDA acceleration, then I definitely think it's still a good investment if you need a new laptop right now. But if you can wait a couple of months, then I would definitely wait to see what Apple has in store with their new 16-inch and 14-inch MacBook Pros. Because if the current M1 MacBooks are any indication, then you might be able to get a much faster laptop for the same price in a couple of months, and then you might feel sorry for having spent so much money on this one now. If you need a new high-performance laptop right now though and don't work with Final Cut, then I don't think that the M1 MacBooks that are out now are really an alternative to this one, because they don't have any dedicated GPUs and thus aren't as fast in those tasks. So basically the gist of it is this. This is still an amazing laptop and I still enjoy using it every day. If you need a new laptop right now for high performance work, then this is definitely still a good buy. And it can also still be a lot cheaper if you need more RAM and storage than Apple's MacBooks. But if you can wait a couple of months, then you might be better off waiting for Apple's 16-inch and 14-inch MacBook Pro, because those might be much faster and then you might feel sorry for having picked this up. Definitely get subscribed, because I will of course try to get my hands on Apple's new 16-inch MacBook Pro when that comes out and compare that to this one. If you enjoyed this video, you know which buttons to press. Don't forget to press that follow button on Twitter, and don't forget your mask when you leave the house. I'm Brian, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.